In this video, we're going to look at integers. An integer is a whole number, and that number could be positive or negative. As long as there's not a fraction in the number, or a decimal point, it's an integer. Now, memory space on any processor or computer is limited, so we can't store a number that's infinitely large. So integers must have a maximum size, and how big that size depends on the processor. An Arduino is a 16-bit processor, so its maximum size is something close to 32,000. It stores negative numbers by using a principle called 2's complement, and it's a really clever way of storing negative numbers. Wikipedia has an excellent explanation on this subject, and if you're interested in this, you should go and check it out. But for now, I'm going to oversimplify integers and say that if what you're counting is less than 32,000, integers are for you. But what if you want to count something more than 32,000? Well, you can use a thing called a long int, which doubles the amount of memory allocated to that variable, expanding its maximum number to 2.1 billion. But don't use these larger variables unless you have to. The reason for this is memory space. Say you want to store the number 1 billion. Well, that's going to use 4 bytes of memory to store this, and so a long int is appropriate in this situation. But say you only want to count to 10. Well, it's also going to use 4 bytes of memory to store this, and that's going to be a waste of memory in that situation. In our laptops and computers, we've got lots of memory, but with our Arduinos, we only have a tiny bit of memory, and so it matters here. Let's do a little bit of programming. This is how you declare an integer called myInt. And it's a very good programming practice to assign a value to the variable. On this line of code, we're saying take the number 0 and put it in a variable called myInteger. Let's define a long integer. It's very similar, apart from the fact that you put a long in front of it. This line says take the number 0 and put it in a variable called myLongInteger, and it's of type long int. Now, to put a number in the variable, you don't have to define it again. Once you've defined it, it stays there until that function has finished. This line of code says take the number 12 and put it in the variable myInteger. Just the same as this line of code says take the number 12 and put it in the value myLongInteger. Well, there's integers in a nutshell.